Good day. This is all we know today on the US-Israel-Iran war, your clear and verified breakdown of the most important developments in the last 24 hours, what has changed since our previous report, and the key developments to watch next. I am Ego Madwago, and this is DSG Herald News on DSG Radio. Let's begin. What happened in the last 24 hours? The conflict intensified significantly in the last 24 hours with heavier airstrikes on Iran, new missile retaliation across the Gulf region, and growing signs that the battlefield is expanding. Major military developments. The biggest development today is a new wave of large-scale US and Israeli airstrike across Iran. Since our last update, Israeli and American forces carried out broad-scale attacks on infrastructure and military targets in Tehran and other Iranian cities. Reports indicate hundreds of targets in the Iranian capital have been struck, including security installations, military bases, and government facilities. Several large explosions were reported overnight in Tehran, with Iranian authorities saying multiple locations, including areas near universities and residential districts, were hit. At the same time, Israeli aircraft also launched strikes in Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah-controlled areas near Beirut and towns in the Bekaa Valley. These operations appear to mark what Israeli officials describe as the new phase of the campaign against Iran. Retaliation and counterattack. Iran responded with another round of missile and drone attacks across the region. Since our last report, Iranian forces have launched missiles and drones towards Israel and several US-aligned Gulf states, including Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. Some of those attacks reportedly targeted US military facilities in the Gulf, where earlier strikes killed several American soldiers. Meanwhile, Iranian officials warned that the United States would face consequences after a US submarine reportedly sank an Iranian warship earlier this week. Expansion of the battlefield. The war is now showing signs of spreading beyond the core Iran-Israel battlefield. First, clashes between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon have intensified, with Israeli strikes targeting Hezbollah positions near Beirut. Second, there are reports of Iranian drone activities beyond the Middle East. Authorities in Azerbaijan say Iranian drones struck an airport in the Nakhchivan region, injuring civilians and raising fears of a broader regional escalation. Iran denies responsibility for that attack. Political leadership statements. Political rhetoric has also escalated. US officials say military operations against Iran could increase significantly in the coming days, suggesting that Washington and Israel are prepared for a longer campaign. Iranian leaders, meanwhile, say the country will continue retaliatory attacks and accuse the United States of escalating the war. Iran's foreign minister has also indicated Tehran currently sees little reasons to negotiate with Washington. International reaction. International concern about the conflict is rising. Several global powers and international organizations are urging restraint, warning that a wider war could destabilize the Middle East and global markets. Some countries are preparing evacuation plans for the citizens in the region, while diplomatic pressure is building for emergency discussions at the United Nations. Economic and energy impacts. The economic impact is already being felt globally. The conflict has disrupted shipping and energy routes in the Middle East, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global oil passage. Oil prices have reportedly risen around 12% since the conflict began, raising concerns about inflation and global economic stability. Air travel across the region has also been affected, with multiple airlines diverting flights and restricting operations. Citizens and public reactions. On the ground, civilians are experiencing the growing impact of the war. In Iran, residents in Tehran report heavy bombings and disruption to daily life, with some infrastructure damage reported. In Israel, thousands of citizens who were abroad when the war began are now returning home as the government gradually reopens limited airspace under tight security. Meanwhile, air raid alerts and civil defense measures remain active in multiple countries across the region. What has changed since yesterday? The key shift in the last 24 hours is a clear increase in military intensity and signs that the war is spreading geographically. Military situation. What's new is the scale of strikes against Tehran. US and Israeli forces have now hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including critical security infrastructure. Iran has continued missile and drone retaliation across the region. What remains unchanged is the core strategy of both sides. Israel and the United States targeting Iran's military capabilities, while Iran uses missile, drones, and proxy networks to retaliate. Regional spread. The conflict appears to be widening. New developments including escalating Israel-Hezbollah clashes in Lebanon, Iranian drone activities affecting countries outside the immediate war zone, continued missile threats across Gulf states. However, it remains unclear whether these incidents represent a coordinated regional escalation or isolated retaliatory actions. Diplomatic movements. Diplomatic channels remain limited. Iran says it currently does not trust negotiations with the United States, while Washington has signaled the military campaigns may continue. So far, there are no confirmed ceasefire talks underway. Countries and world leaders' positions. The global community remains divided. Western allies largely support Israel's right to respond to Iranian threats. Other countries are urging immediate de-escalation, warning that the conflict risks destabilizing the broader region. Verified facts versus claims. Separating confirmed information from unverified reports is critical in a fast-moving conflict. Confirmed developments. US and Israeli forces conducted major strikes across Tehran and other Iranian targets. Iran launched missiles and drones towards Israel and several Gulf countries. Clashes between Israel and Hezbollah intensified in Lebanon. Oil prices have risen amid concerns about regional shipping disruptions. Unverified or disputed claims. Azerbaijan claims Iranian drones struck its airports. Iran denies involvement. Exact casualty figures across the conflict remains unclear and vary widely by source. Some reports of damage to cultural or historical sites in Tehran have not yet been independently confirmed. Why this matters? These developments have major strategic implications for the region and the global economy. Risk of a wider regional war. The biggest concern is whether the conflict spreads further. If Hezbollah fully joins the war from Lebanon, or if Iranian aligned militias expand attacks on US bases in Iraq or Syria. The war could quickly escalate into a much larger regional conflict. Military advantage and battlefield strategy. Israel and the United States appear focused on destroying Iran's missile and air defense infrastructure. However, Iran still retains the ability to retaliate using missiles, drones, and proxy groups. This means the conflict could become a prolonged war or strikes and counter-strikes. Global energy and economic impact. This war directly affects global energy markets. If shipping through the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted, oil prices could rise significantly, affecting fuel prices, inflation, and economic stability worldwide. For African countries that import fuel, this could translate into higher energy costs and economic pressure. Global power politics. The conflict is also reshaping global alliances. The United States is deeply involved alongside Israel. Meanwhile, other major powers such as Russia and China are watching closely and positioning themselves diplomatically. This war could become a major turning point in global power politics. What to watch in the next 24 to 48 hours. Several developments could shape the next phase of the conflict. First, possible escalation of air campaigns. If US and Israeli strikes expand further inside Iran, the war could intensify rapidly. Second, Hezbollah's next move. A full military entry by Hezbollah from Lebanon would significantly widen the war. Third, attacks on energy infrastructure. Any strike on oil facilities or shipping routes could send global energy prices sharply higher. Fourth, diplomatic intervention. Emergency UN discussions on mediation efforts could begin if international pressure grows. And finally, Iranian retaliation. The scale and targets of Iran's next missile or drone strike will signal how the conflict may evolve. We will be watching all of these developments closely. That's all we know today on the US-Israel-Iran war. As the story continues to develop, DSG Herald News on DSG Radio will keep bringing you verified updates, structured analysis, and clear strategic insights every single day. I am Ego Maduago. Stay informed, stay analytical, and we'll see you in the next update. Thank you.